My name is Elena Marsh. I'm 45 years old, and for the last 19 years, I've made my living telling people the truth about what's hanging on their walls. I'm a fine art appraiser and authenticator, certified by 2 national boards, and I've spent almost 2 decades learning to see the difference between what a painting claims to be and what it actually is. 3 weeks ago, my brother invited me to the opening night of his new gallery, a celebration, he called it, of our late mother's private collection, finally being shown to the world. By the time the champagne ran out that night, I would have already told 40 guests, calmly and out loud, exactly what was wrong with 6 of the 11 paintings on those walls. And what my brother didn't know, what I hadn't told a single person in my family, was that I'd already reported 3 of those same paintings to the State Fraud Bureau 9 days before the doors ever opened. Welcome back to her final chapter, where every story starts with silence and ends with power. If you've ever been asked to quietly put your name on something you knew was wrong, this one's for you. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and let's get into it. I've worked out of a small studio above a framing shop in Portland since I was 29, though my client list stretches from regional museums to private collectors who fly me out for a single afternoon's work. Authentication isn't glamorous. It's magnification and pigment analysis and provenance records, and the particular ache behind your eyes after staring at brushstrokes for 6 hours straight. I've testified in 3 civil suits over disputed attributions. I've cost people money by telling them the truth, and I've never once regretted it, because the alternative is letting someone hang a lie on their wall and call it heritage. I have a habit most people find strange. When I look at a painting, I don't look at the subject first. I look at the edges, the places where a forger gets tired or careless or runs out of the patience the original artist had in abundance. My late husband used to tease me about it. "You're doing the thing," he'd say, watching my eyes skip past a stunning centerpiece straight to some unremarkable corner. I never trained myself out of it. In my work, the edges are where the truth hides. I tell you this now because it matters later. When my brother Desmond called about the gallery opening, our mother's collection, finally getting the recognition he said she deserved, I wasn't thinking about pigment or provenance. I was thinking about how long it had been since Desmond had called me about anything that wasn't a problem he needed fixed. I should have looked at the edges of that invitation the way I look at the edges of everything else. I didn't, because some part of me, the part that isn't an authenticator, the part that's just a younger sister who buried her mother 2 years ago, wanted so badly for it to be exactly what it said it was. It came on a Thursday evening, while I was cleaning brushes at my studio sink, phone wedged between my shoulder and my ear. "Elena." Desmond's voice had that particular warmth he reserved for asking favors. "I need to tell you something exciting. I'm opening a gallery, Marsh Contemporary downtown. First show is Mom's private collection, the pieces she never let anyone see. I want you there opening night. I want the whole family there. And Elena," a pause, practiced, "I might need you to just put your name on a few of the authentication certificates. Nothing complicated, just a formality, so the provenance paperwork looks clean for insurance. Just put your name on it." I set down the brush I was cleaning. It was Desmond's phrase. I'd heard him use it the year he asked me to co-sign a loan for his first failed gallery, the one that closed within 14 months. He'd used it again after our mother's funeral when he asked me to just put my name on the estate inventory he'd drafted himself, so probate moves faster. I signed that one without reading it closely. I've regretted it more than once since. That was 2 years ago. I still don't have an itemized copy of what that inventory actually listed, but it was the phrase "the whole family" that got me. Desmond hadn't organized anything that included all of us since before Mom got sick. I stood at my sink with soap running cold over my hands and let myself want something I knew better than to want. Here's what actually happened, because after 19 years of authentication work, provenance is the only version of my family's history I fully trust. Our mother, Ruth Marsh, spent 40 years quietly building an art collection on a schoolteacher's salary and a sharp eye for undervalued regional painters, several of whom went on to real recognition later in their careers. When she died, her estate included 11 paintings with a combined appraised value, my own appraisal, done privately, the year before she passed, of just under $1.4 million. Her will named Desmond executor, with the collection to be split 3 ways between Desmond, myself, and our younger sister Priya, with the explicit instruction that no piece could be sold or publicly exhibited without written agreement from all 3 of us and a current certified appraisal. Mom added that clause because she knew Desmond. She knew that left alone with something valuable, he'd find a way to move quickly and call the paperwork a formality afterward. For 2 years, the arrangement mostly held, in the loose way things hold in families that avoid conflict. Desmond stored the collection in a climate-controlled unit he managed, paid for from a shared account we all contributed to. I checked in periodically. Priya mostly didn't, busy with her own kids and her own life 3 states away. Every time I raised the idea of getting a fresh certified appraisal before anything changed hands, Desmond would say, "Elena, we don't need to make this formal. It's Mom's collection. We're not strangers," in a tone that always made me feel slightly paranoid for asking. I let it go. That's the part I'm least proud of. I've spent 19 years telling clients that undocumented family art holdings are one of the most common ways people lose things they thought were protected, and I let my own name sit on a $1.4 million estate with no real documentation behind my say in any of it, because pushing felt like accusing my own brother of something I didn't have proof of yet. I didn't have proof. Not until 5 weeks before that phone call, when a colleague at a competing authentication firm, a man named Oscar, who owed me a professional favor from a dispute I'd helped him navigate the year before, mentioned, almost in passing, that he'd been contacted about authenticating several regional paintings for an upcoming Portland gallery show and had recognized 2 of the pieces from photographs he'd once cross-referenced for an entirely different case, a documented forgery ring operating out of the Pacific Northwest for nearly a decade. He hadn't meant to tell me anything alarming. He just assumed I already knew what was in my own mother's collection. I didn't know. Nobody had told me. What I actually wanted, sitting there with Desmond's voice still warm in my ear 2 weeks later, the thing I never said out loud to anyone, not even to myself until the drive downtown on opening night, wasn't the money, and it wasn't even the collection. It was for my brother, one single time in 45 years, to tell me something true before I had to go find it myself. My colleague has known me for 9 years and has never once let me talk myself out of what I already suspected. "You already have my notes," he said over the phone 2 nights before the opening, his voice careful in the way people get when they know they're about to complicate someone's life. 2 pieces with documentation gaps matching a known forgery pattern, a brother asking you to co-sign authentication certificates for insurance purposes, and a gallery opening in 48 hours. Elena, you do this for a living. If a client brought you this exact pattern, what would you tell them? "It's my mother's collection," I said. "It's my brother." "It's Desmond's gallery," Oscar said. "You've told me yourself. Every project he's run for a decade has needed someone else's name attached to make it look solvent." He let that sit. "You built a career reading exactly this kind of situation. Family asking for your signature on something they're calling routine. Bring your equipment. Don't bring blind faith. You used up your faith on this a long time ago. You just haven't said it out loud." I told him I'd bring my loupe and my notes, that I'd look at everything myself before I signed anything, that it would be fine. "That's not a no," he said. It wasn't. I went anyway. But I didn't go without doing something first. 9 days before that opening, I filed a formal inquiry with the state's Art Fraud Bureau, flagging the 2 paintings Oscar had identified, along with everything I could find in my own records. I'll tell you what came of it, just not yet. Stay with me here, because what I found in that gallery, I didn't go looking for it either. It found me, in the time it takes to refill a glass of wine at someone else's opening. The gallery occupied a renovated warehouse space downtown, the kind of exposed brick and track lighting that costs more to fake than to actually restore. White walls. A bar in the corner staffed by 2 servers in black. 11 paintings, spaced with careful, expensive precision, small brass placards beneath each one. There were 40 guests, easily, milling under lights that made everything look more valuable than it was. I stood near the entrance with my bag still on my shoulder, counting the placards, because of course I was counting, and got to 7 before my brother found me. "Elena!" He hugged me the way you hug someone you're steering past a checkpoint, one hand already gesturing toward the room. "Isn't it incredible? We've got some serious collectors here tonight, a couple of insurance underwriters, even a reporter from the arts section. You don't mind that it's a bigger crowd than I mentioned, right?" I minded. I said I didn't. The first crack came within minutes. I passed the small office behind the main gallery floor and saw, through the half-open door, a stack of unopened mail on Desmond's desk, including a past due notice from the storage facility he'd told me twice was handled out of the shared account. Beside it, an open bottle of wine I recognized from the price list on the bar menu, $410. I did the math without meaning to. I always do the math without meaning to. Small brick number 1 landed at the bar. A tan man in an expensive blazer, introduced to me as one of the underwriters, shook my hand and said, "So, you're the sister who does the little magnifying glass thing? Desmond mentioned you're very thorough." He smiled like thorough was a diagnosis. Brick number 2 came from a woman I recognized as an old family friend, refilling my glass before I'd finished it. "It's so wonderful you came. Desmond always says you get funny about Mom's paintings, overprotective. But it's family, right? We're all just so proud of him tonight." I hadn't said a word about pride. Brick number 3 was quieter, and it stung more. My sister Priya, arriving late, squeezed my hand and murmured, "Try to be easy tonight, Elle. Desmond's under a lot of pressure with the launch. Let's not make it complicated." Complicated. 2 years of our mother's legacy, filed under complicated. I found the thing that changed everything a little after 9 that night, entirely by accident, the way most true things get found. I'd slipped into the small office to charge my phone, the outlet near the bar was already taken, and found a laptop open on Desmond's desk, the screen still lit. I wasn't snooping. I want to be honest about that. I was standing there waiting for my battery percentage to climb, and the document was simply already on the screen. It was an insurance valuation submission. 11 paintings, listed individually, each with a certified appraisal value attached, figures nearly double what my own private appraisal, done for Mom the year before she died, had documented. Below the valuations, a section labeled authentication certifications with 3 signature lines, 2 of them already filled. Desmond Marsh, Priya Marsh Okafor. The third line was blank. It had my name typed beneath it, waiting. I've reviewed hundreds of these submissions in my career, and something about the shape of this one made my stomach drop before my brain finished cataloging why. 2 of the 11 paintings listed provenance documentation I recognized, not because I'd seen the real paperwork, but because I'd seen forged versions of nearly identical language in Oscar's case file 6 weeks earlier. The exact 2 pieces he'd flagged. My phone hit full charge. I unplugged it, and I stood in that office a long moment, my hands not shaking, because they never shake, not even then. I photographed 5 pages of that submission with a hand as steady as if I were photographing a grocery list. Then I closed the laptop exactly the way I'd found it and walked back onto the gallery floor like a woman who hadn't just learned her brother was submitting a near-doubled insurance valuation on a collection that included at least 2 pieces tied to a known forgery ring, using a signature he hadn't gotten yet. If you've made it this far, you already know where this is going, but you don't know how it happens yet. Stay with me. The rest of the evening, I watched my brother work the room the way he'd once worked our family. A warm hand on every shoulder, a story for every guest. I watched the underwriter accept a second glass of that $400 wine and nod along to something Desmond said about getting the paperwork wrapped before the insurance renewal deadline. I understood, standing there, that this wasn't a celebration of our mother at all. It was a closing event. And somewhere between the toasts and the canapes, my brother was planning to ask his most convenient, most trusting signature for one more favor. Me. Second delivery of the phrase came near 10, when Desmond found me near the back wall, refilling my water instead of my wine. "Elena." He had a way of saying my name like he was doing me a favor by remembering it. "I know I should have sent you the full paperwork sooner, but everything's solid, I promise, and it's just a formality at this point. I just need your name on the certification tonight so the underwriters can finalize before they leave. You trust me on this, right?" I smiled at him the way I smile at clients right before I tell them the piece they love isn't what they think it is. "I always trust the edges, Desmond," I said. "It's kind of my whole thing." He laughed like I'd made a joke. I hadn't. The evening ran long, the room filling with the particular hum of a party that thinks it's already succeeded. I don't remember most of what anyone said because I spent it doing analysis in my head with my glass barely touched. Desmond made his move around 10:30, standing near the center of the gallery, glass raised, guests gathering the way people gather for a man like him. "I want to say a few words," he announced, and the room settled, faces turning warm and expectant.
Tonight is about my mother, Ruth Marsh, and the eye she had for beauty most people walked right past. Scattered applause. But it's also about family. My sister Elena is here tonight, the best authenticator in this state, honestly, and I want her to formally put her name behind what we're showing the world tonight. He looked at me directly now. Every head in the room followed his gaze. Elena, I know you like to take your time with paperwork, but this is Mom's legacy, and it deserves to be seen. It's just a formality at this point. Sign it, and we're done. I let the silence sit. 1 second, 2, 3, 4, 5 full seconds, the longest silence I have ever held on purpose in my life, while 40 strangers under gallery lighting looked between the confident man near the center of the room and the quiet woman near the back wall, and somewhere near me, I heard Priya's glass stop halfway to her lips. You're right, I finally said, and I watched Desmond's shoulders relax half an inch before I finished the sentence. This is Mom's legacy, so let's actually show it honestly. I stepped forward. I didn't raise my voice. I have never once in 19 years of authentication work needed to raise my voice to be heard. The trick isn't volume, it's certainty, and I had spent 9 days quietly collecting the certainty this exact moment required. Since we're talking about showing this honestly, I said, I'd like to actually walk the room through what's on these walls. It's what I do for a living, and I think everyone here deserves to hear it. Priya's expression didn't move, but her eyes did. A small, fast flick toward Desmond that told me she already suspected something was wrong. My phone was already in my hand. 2 years ago, our mother left this collection to the three of us equally, with a requirement that any exhibition or sale needed unanimous agreement and a current certified appraisal, I said. Tonight, Desmond asked me to sign an authentication certification for an insurance submission I'd never seen until an hour ago. I held up my phone. So I looked at it, the way I'd look at any submission before putting my professional name behind it. Elena. Desmond's voice had lost its warmth by half a degree. This isn't the place. You made it the place, I said, calm, even. In front of everyone. I turned toward 2 specific paintings on the east wall, a river landscape and a small portrait, both hung under identical lighting to everything else, both utterly unremarkable to look at unless you knew where to check. These 2 pieces carry provenance documentation that matches, almost word for word, forged paperwork tied to a documented regional forgery ring, a case I only know about because a colleague flagged it to me 5 weeks ago. The insurance valuation submitted tonight values this entire collection at nearly double my own certified appraisal from last year. The silence that followed wasn't the polite kind. That's not... Desmond tried and stopped and tried again, louder. That's a difference in market interpretation. Appraisals vary, you're reading this without full context. Every legitimate appraisal can show its comparables and its methodology, I said. Can you show this room yours, right now? He couldn't. I watched him try, pulling out his own phone, scrolling for something, his easy warmth cracking at the corners into something thinner and more desperate, a man discovering in real time that a room full of people didn't automatically keep believing him just because he asked them to. I've been carrying this gallery's launch costs alone for months, he said, and it came out sharper than he meant it to, defensive in a way that surprised even him. I needed the valuation to work for the insurance to make sense. I was going to sort out the details after. You needed my name before anyone asked what sort out meant, I said. The underwriter set down his wine glass entirely. Desmond, he said slowly, is what she's describing accurate? And there it was, the 3rd attempt, the smallest, most honest thing my brother said all night, quiet enough that only the people close to him heard it. The numbers got away from me. I needed this show to work. I was going to have everything properly re-authenticated after the opening. I just needed tonight to go smoothly first. Nobody in that gallery needed a professional authenticator to translate that sentence. I've heard people confess to worse things under nicer lighting, and it never sounds any different than that. Small and tired, and finally true. I looked at my sister. Priya wasn't looking at Desmond anymore. She was looking at her hands. I don't owe you my silence, I said to her quietly, just for her, though the room heard it anyway. I never did. Then, because I could see Desmond's eyes drop back toward his phone, already searching for some new angle, already hoping proximity alone might still get him a signature, I told the room the thing I'd been carrying for 9 days. You don't actually need my signature to move forward tonight, I said. You needed it to make tonight legitimate. 9 days ago, I filed a formal inquiry with the State Art Fraud Bureau, flagging these two pieces along with the documentation discrepancies I'd found. Any insurer running due diligence on this submission, and I'd guess at least one person in this room already plans to, is going to find that filing. This valuation can't move forward. Not tonight. Not with my name missing, and not with what's now on record. Desmond's face went the color of the gallery walls. You did that before you even walked in here, he said. It wasn't a question. I did it before I knew for certain what you were planning, I said. I did it because 19 years of looking at edges taught me that trust and verification aren't opposites.
You just never wanted me to have both at the same time. The underwriter left within 20 minutes, polite and unreadable, already on his phone in the elevator. 2 collectors followed shortly after. I later learned one of them called his own appraiser from the sidewalk before his car arrived. By the following Monday, the Fraud Bureau had opened a formal investigation into both flagged paintings, and by the week after that, into the broader provenance chain Desmond had used for the insurance filing, based in part on documentation I'd provided, entirely lawfully, entirely on the record, because I never once touched a system I wasn't authorized to see. Everything I showed that room, I'd gathered honestly. A laptop screen left open in a shared office, in plain view, and a filing I had every right to make as a co-owner protecting the integrity of an estate I was legally responsible for. Oscar's original flag, it turned out, had already reached 2 other authenticators independently. I wasn't the only professional who'd noticed. Priya didn't leave the gallery with Desmond that night. She waited until most of the guests had gone, and the next afternoon, she called me. She didn't apologize, not fully, not the way I used to imagine she would in the version of this story where everything gets tied up clean. What she said was smaller, and I think more honest. I signed because he told me you'd already reviewed everything and were fine with it. I didn't check. I didn't want to be the one who found out I was wrong. I told her I understood that better than she thought I did. The collection is under a formal legal hold now, as I'm telling you this. A process that will require a full independent re-authentication of all 11 pieces before anything can be sold, insured, or exhibited again. I don't know yet how many of them will hold up. I've made peace with that faster than I expected to. But here's the second thing, the quieter thing, the one that had nothing to do with the fraud at all. 2 weeks after that night, I found, tucked inside a box of my mother's old exhibition catalogs that Priya finally sent me, a small spiral notebook in Mom's handwriting, notes on every piece in her collection, written for herself over decades, the way a person writes things down when they don't quite trust anyone else to remember them accurately. Beside the entry for a small, unremarkable landscape she'd bought for $80 in 1991, she'd written, Elena will know if this one's real long after I'm gone. She always sees the parts everyone else skips past. I sat on my studio floor and read that line 4 times, the way I read everything. My mother had known, decades before any of this happened, exactly which of her children would end up protecting what she'd built. I don't think that fixes 2 years, or the collection, or my brother. I don't think it's supposed to. But it's the first true thing my family has handed me without my having to go looking for it myself. I used to think being the careful one meant being the one nobody worried about. Now I know it just meant being the one nobody double-checked with. Those aren't the same thing, and it took a gallery full of strangers and a laptop I wasn't supposed to see for me to finally believe the difference. Just put your name on it is just a phrase people use for the truth they're hoping you won't look at closely. And I stopped skimming past it 2 years too late, but I stopped. That's my story. If it meant something to you, drop a comment and tell me. I read every one. And if you want more stories like this, hit subscribe to her final chapter, because there's another one waiting for you next week.